Սպասելու ժամանակ չկա։ Զանգի բժիշկներից գիտես, ասա թող գան էստեղ։
Մեր ապրած կյանքի վրա վստահ ենք ունան։ Նայենց ենք ապրել, որ կարող ենք այսօր հանգիստ քնել։
Այդ ոնց սկսեցիր միանգամից անհանգստանալ։
Պապա, նորից եմ հարցնում, ինչ ա եղել Գրիշ։
Դա եղել է երկուսից ցանկությամբ։
Բա որ երկուսից ցանկությամբ ա եղել, ինչ ես միայնակ
օգնություն զանգեմ։
Չէ, հենց հիմա տարեք Գրիշի մոտ։
Հայ մամ ջան, ես հեռու եմ մնում։ Ինքնա տազի պես կպելու փոք։
Եթե դրանք չլինեին, իմ տղեն չէր հայտնվի ստեղ։
Նույն հաջողությամբ տղադ չէր հայտնվի հիվանդանոցում։
Grisho is going to open his eyes again, and the very first thing he sees is not going to be his wife's face. It is going to be his father's. And that single detail is going to tell you everything about who actually controls this family when death comes knocking at the door. I am telling you this with complete certainty because everything this family has built over the past few episodes has been leading exactly here, to a hospital corridor where money, pride, and blood are about to collide in the ugliest way possible, and nobody in that building is walking away from this week unchanged. Before we go any further, tell me quickly in the comments where you are watching this from tonight, because I genuinely read every single comment you leave me, and I love seeing just how far this story has traveled. So drop your city, drop your country, let me see how big this family of viewers really is, and then let's get straight back into it. Here is where we left things. Grisho is lying in that operating room with a spine that might never let him walk again. Manon is pregnant, broken, and still furious at him for a betrayal she has not forgiven. Hunan is standing at a window, unable to buy his way out of a nightmare for the first time in his life. And Ashken has just confessed, out loud, in front of everyone, that she believes she is the true sinner of this family. That confession did not just disappear into the air. A woman like Ashken does not say something that heavy and then wake up the next morning acting like nothing happened. In the next episode, you are going to watch her carry that guilt like a stone in her chest, refusing food, refusing rest, pushing away anyone who tries to comfort her, because in her mind, comfort is something she has not earned. Watch closely how David responds to this, because David has spent this entire storyline being the quiet one, the reasonable one, the son who holds everyone else together while falling apart himself. And this is the episode where that role finally starts to crack him from the inside. Now let's talk about Hunan, because everything you thought you knew about this man is about to be tested in a way no amount of wealth can fix. Hunan has spent his entire life believing that any problem, any enemy, any obstacle can be solved with enough pressure, enough fear, enough money thrown at the right people. That philosophy worked when it came to business rivals, when it came to silencing gossip, when it came to controlling his son's choices. It does not work on a damaged spinal cord. The doctor already warned him, delaying surgery increases the risk. And in the next episode, Hunan is going to be forced into the single most powerless decision of his life, trusting a surgeon he did not personally select, in a hospital he does not personally own, with an outcome he cannot personally guarantee. Watch his hands in this episode. Watch how a man who has never once begged is going to come dangerously close to it, because for the first time, his son's life is not something he can negotiate for. Manon's act in this episode is where the emotional weight of the entire story is going to land hardest. She told her mother-in-law that nothing else in the world mattered except Grisho waking up. And I believe her, because we watched her refuse to leave that hospital corridor even when everyone begged her to go home and rest. But here's the twist you have not considered yet. Being pregnant while your husband is on the edge of paralysis is not just an emotional crisis. It is a decision she cannot postpone forever. In the next episode, Manon is going to be forced to confront a question she has been avoiding since the moment that phone call came in about the accident. Does she want her child to grow up in this family at all? Does she want her child raised inside a house where love and betrayal and control are so tangled together that nobody can tell them apart anymore? This is not a question she is going to answer out loud yet, but you are going to see it written all over her face the moment Ashken tries to comfort her and Manon pulls away. Let's talk about Avo, because if you have been paying close attention the way I have, you already noticed something was off about him from the very moment he arrived at that house. He showed up at exactly the right time, positioned himself close to David on the drive to the hospital, and somehow, out of everyone, he was among the first people to know the details of Grisho's accident. In the next episode, that pattern does not stop, it gets worse. Watch how conveniently he inserts himself into private family conversations, how he lingers a little too long near doors that should be closed, how his questions about the family's finances and Hunan's enemies are phrased just casually enough to seem harmless. A man who claims to be driven purely by guilt over an old mistake does not usually need this much information this quickly. I am not telling you Avo caused the accident. I am telling you that the people who benefit most from a family's weakest moment are rarely the ones standing in the spotlight. They're the ones quietly refilling everyone's coffee and listening. Now, Erna, you thought she was gone from this story, didn't you? Ina already planted that seed for us, mentioning that Erna has not given up on Grigor. And in the next episode, that seed is going to bloom at the worst possible time. Manon is pregnant, exhausted, emotionally raw, and completely unable to fight for her marriage the way she normally would. And this is precisely the moment a woman like Erna chooses to reappear. Not with confrontation, but with soft concern, gentle messages.
The kind of quiet presence that looks like sympathy from the outside, but functions like a slow siege from within. Watch how Grisho reacts to her the moment he becomes aware of his surroundings again. Because a man who nearly died does not always come back the same person who left. And grief has a strange way of making people reach for whoever made them feel simple and understood, even if that person is dangerous. Let's not forget old Avo, the grandfather, whose bitterness has been simmering under the surface since the very first mention of Raphael's name. This man has already shown he is willing to weaponize guilt, reminding his own son that he was left alone after Raphael died, using grief as leverage to pull the family back under his control. In the next episode, watch how he tries to use Grisho's accident the exact same way, gathering the family physically in one place under the excuse of unity, while really trying to remind everyone that he is still the head of this bloodline, that Hunan's empire was built on foundations the old man laid decades ago. But Hunan is not the same son who once quietly absorbed his father's manipulation. A man who has already buried one child and is now watching a second one fight for his ability to walk again does not have patience left for old power games. And that collision, long overdue, is finally going to happen out loud, in front of everyone, in this very episode. Here is where the story turns from painful to genuinely frightening. The surgery is going to happen, and it is not going to be simple. Somewhere in the middle of that operation, something is going to go wrong. Not fatally, but seriously enough that the surgeon comes out with a face that makes everyone in that waiting room go completely silent. This is the moment the entire emotional architecture of this family gets tested at once. Hunan is going to want to explode, to demand answers, to threaten the medical staff the way he threatens everyone else in his life. And for the first time, someone is going to stand in front of him and refuse to be intimidated, because doctors do not respond to money the way business partners do. Ashken is going to collapse the way she has been threatening to all episode, and this is the moment her guilt finally becomes physical, not just emotional. Manon is going to have to decide in that exact instant whether she runs towards Hunan's chaos or towards her own child's well-being, because stress like this at this stage of pregnancy is not something the story is going to treat lightly. And this is where the twist comes in, the one you did not see coming. Remember what old Avo said, almost offhandedly, about having done something similar when he was young? That was not filler dialogue. That was a door left slightly open. And in this episode, that door is going to open a little further. A nurse, or possibly a hospital administrator who recognizes the Makunsian name, is going to say something in passing about the family's history with this exact hospital. Something about Raphael. Something that does not match the story the family has told for years. Hunan is going to hear it. And in that one sentence, the ground beneath this entire family is going to shift. Because if Raphael's death was not the simple tragedy everyone has always claimed it was, then everything Hunan has built his identity around, the guilt, the overprotection of his remaining sons, the ruthless control, all of it starts to look less like grief and more like something he has been hiding from himself for years. By the final scenes of this episode, Grisho is going to be out of surgery, alive, stable, but the question of whether he will ever walk again is going to remain unanswered, deliberately, painfully unanswered, because this story is not ready to give you relief yet. Manon is going to be standing at his bedside, one hand resting on her stomach, staring at a man she does not fully trust anymore,
wondering if she has the strength to build a life around someone who might need to be carried through the rest of it. Ashken is going to be sitting outside that room, refusing to go home, refusing to eat, quietly falling apart in a way nobody in this loud, dramatic family knows how to fix. Because her pain is silent, and silent pain is always the hardest kind for people like Hunan to understand. And Hunan himself is going to be standing in a hallway, phone in hand, staring at a name he has not called in years, someone connected to what really happened the night Raphael died, someone he swore he would never speak to again. And just as the episode seems ready to end on that fragile, uneasy piece, with Grisho breathing steadily in his hospital bed, and the family finally daring to hope, a single text message is going to arrive on Manon's phone, from a number she does not recognize, containing nothing but a photograph, one that is going to prove Erna never actually stayed away at all.
That photograph is going to be the single most dangerous piece of evidence this entire family has seen since the night Grisho's car flipped on the road to Savan. And I am telling you right now, Manon is not going to sleep after seeing it. Quick thing before we continue. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight. I read every single one of them. I just love seeing how far this story travels. So drop your city and let's keep going. The photo on Manon's phone is going to show Erna standing outside Grisho's hospital room, time-stamped from earlier that same night. Proof that she was there, close enough to see him, close enough to speak to him, while Manon herself was being kept away by nurses, insisting only family could enter. Manon is going to stare at that image with her hand still resting on her stomach, and the fury she felt toward Grisho for his past betrayal is going to come rushing back tenfold, except this time it is tangled with something worse. Fear that she is fighting a war she cannot win from a hospital chair while 8 months pregnant. She is not going to confront Grisho immediately. Watch her instead go quiet, controlled, dangerously calm, because Manon has learned by now that screaming gets her nowhere in this family. Information does. Meanwhile, Hunan is going to make that phone call, the one connected to Raphael's death. And the voice on the other end is not going to be who you expect. It is going to be someone who worked at that exact hospital years ago, someone who left the country shortly after Raphael died, someone Hunan paid handsomely to disappear. The conversation is going to be short, tense, full of things left unsaid. But one sentence is going to slip through that changes everything. A mention that Raphael was not alone that night the way the official story claims. Hunan's face in that hallway is going to tell you he already suspected this, buried deep, for years, and chose never to look at it directly until now. Ashken, still refusing to eat, still sitting outside Grisho's room like a woman keeping vigil over her own guilt, is going to overhear fragments of that call. Watch her reaction carefully, because a mother who has spent decades believing she failed to protect her children is about to learn the truth might be far darker than her own perceived failures, and that discovery is going to either break her completely or wake something fierce in her that this family has not seen in years. By the end of the stretch, Grisho is finally going to regain full consciousness, disoriented, weak, asking for Manon first, not Erna, which should feel like relief, except Manon is going to walk into that room holding her phone, the photograph still open, and instead of relief on her face, you are going to see a woman deciding, right there, whether the man she loves is even worth fighting for anymore. While behind her, in the hallway, Hunan is standing frozen, staring at his own phone, because the man he just spoke to said one more thing right before hanging up. A name that belongs to someone still living in this city, someone this family sees every single week without ever once suspecting the truth.